Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today thank you so much for stopping by. In this video we'll be cutting and sewing these Halter neck waistcoats that you can see on your screen. So I used 1 yard of Mikado fabric for this style. So we're going to draft on our pattern paper before transferring to the main fabric. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. The first thing I did was to take out 1.5 inches on the center front. This is going to be for my button placket. I'll connect the dots all the way to the end of the pattern paper, and on the upper part of the pattern paper I rolled out half an inch, which is going to serve as my shoulder line. So the next thing I'll do is to take my points. The first point is the distance from my shoulder to my nipple point, that is my bust point. This is 10 inches. The next point is the distance from my shoulder to my waist point in front. It is 17.5 inches. So I'll connect the dots like this and I'll rule straight lines across. The first line is my bust point while the second line is my waist point. The next thing I'll do is to determine the length of my waistcoat. So from the waist point I'm going to go down by 6 inches. That is how long I want it to be. So you go ahead and figure that out. So I'm going to connect the 6 inches like this, okay? So after doing that, I'll label my lines, the bust line, the waistline, and the blouse length. The next thing I did was to go in by half of my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. On that 8 inches, I went down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. And then I'm going to take my neck width. The neck width is going to be 3 inches. So what I'll do is to slant from the neck width to the 1 inch that I came down with. After doing that, I'm going to go down by my armhole depth, which is 8 inches. I'll indicate the 8 inches with a dot. On that dot, I'm going to roll a straight line across. This line is going to be the chest line. So the same measurements I have on the shoulder line, I placed it on the chest line. I indicated it with a dot and I connected the 2 dots into a straight line like this. The next thing I'll do is to find the middle point of the straight line. Half of 8 inches is 4 inches. So I marked the middle point, which is 4 inches, and I labeled the line, the chest line. The next thing I did was to come in by 1 inch on the chest line and I'll extend the line, okay? After doing that, I'm going to connect from my shoulder line, okay? I'm going to connect from that shoulder slant to meet the 1 inch that I extended to the button area, okay? So this is how deep I want the neckline to be. If you want it deeper, you can take it down a bit, okay? So from the waistline, I'll go down by 2.5 inches. On the 2.5 inches dot, I'll come in by 1 inch like this, and I'll use my roller to extend the 1 inch out like this. After doing that, I'm going to connect the extension to the extension on the chest line, just like this. So this is going to be the button area, okay? This is where we'll be fixing our button. It's going to overlap, okay? So next now is to go in on the length. I'll go in by 4 inches, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement. So I'll mark the 4 inches on the blouse length, on the waist line, and on the bust line. After doing that, I'll connect the 3 dots into a straight line. On the waistline, I'm going to go in by half an inch on the left, and I'll also take half an inch on the right. After doing that, I'm going to connect upward and I'll connect downward. So I'll place my roller like this, I'll connect it up like this, and then I'll connect to the base of the blouse. After taking in the dart, I'll mark the center of the straight line, and then I'm going to use the curved part of my ruler to connect from that center to meet the chest line like this. Then I'm going to take in my dart on the armhole area. I'll go down by 1 inch from the line that I have there. I'll go down by 1 inch. I'll indicate the 1 inch. After doing that, I'm going to connect the 1 inch back into this curve that we have. I'm doing this so the blouse does not gape on the armhole area, okay? After doing that, I'm going to extend that line by 1 inch. So I'll go out by 1 inch from what we already have. So what I'm doing is extending the dart by 1 inch. So when I'm joining the bustier area together, my fabric is going to be enough. Whatever allowance I have, I'm going to trim it out. So after doing that, I'm going to place my tape on the chest line, and I'll place my bust circumference divided by 4. I'll indicate that with a dot. After doing that, I'll replace this dot that I took on the armhole, which is 1 inch, and then I'll add 1 extra inch for stitching allowance. Okay, so on the 1 inch for stitching allowance, I'll place my tape on that dot and I'll go down by half an inch. I'll also indicate the half an inch with a dot. So when I'm connecting from the armhole, I'm connecting to the half an inch that I came down with. So what I'll do now is to place my ruler on the extension, the armhole extension, and I'll connect to the half an inch. After connecting, I'll use my marker to make the lines more visible. On the waistline, I'll place my waist circumference divided by 4. I'll replace the dart of 1 inch and I'll add 1 inch for my stitching allowance. So make sure you are not placing your tape on the button line, okay? So I'll connect from the bust line all the way to the waistline like this. On the center, I'm going to go in by 2 inches. I'll indicate the 2 inches with a dot. On the waistline by the side, I'm going to come in by 1 inch, which is my stitching allowance. So I'm going to slant from the 1 inch all the way to the 2 inches like this, okay? After doing that, I'm going to go in by 1.5 inches on the shoulder area. Okay, this is how wide I want the shoulder area to be. If you want it slimmer, you've already seen my outcome. If you want yours to be slim, you can do 1 inch. So I'm going to use the curved part of my ruler now to connect from the 1.5 inches into the armhole area. Okay, so you can determine how deep you want it to be. If it's too deep, your bust might show on the armhole area. So just determine how deep you want it to be. Okay, after using my pencil, I went ahead to use my marker to outline it. So I placed my tape and I marked the distance between the dart that I have there. So what I did now was to replace it on the side front. Okay, so one side is not longer than the other side when I'm joining them together. So I went up by the measurement, which is half an inch. I went up by half an inch on the side and then I connected it back like this. The next thing I'll do now is to take my side dart. So the distance from my shoulder to my waist in front is 17.5 inches, while the distance from my shoulder to my waist at the back is 14 inches. So the difference between the front waist and the back waist is 1.5 inches. So you can go ahead and measure yours. Okay, so I'll go down by the 1.5 inches, which is the difference. I'll indicate the 1.5 inches with a dot. So I went down from the bust line by 1.5 inches and I'll connect it like this. So after connecting, I'm going to shade out this part because we'll be closing the dart soon. Okay, after doing that, I'll outline the shoulder area and then I'll slant from the center front to the base of the blouse like this. So the point where I'm slanting from is where the button is going to stop. This other part is going to be open. After connecting, this is what I have. So we'll not be cutting this out. We'll first of all draft out the back before cutting. So for the back, I've gone ahead to mark my point. So distance from my shoulder to my chest line, distance from my shoulder to my waist at the back. The waist at the back is 14 inches. Okay, so I also added 1 inch to the 14 inches for the length of the back. Okay, so what I'll do now is to go in by half of my shoulder measurement. On that dot, I'll go down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. So the neck width remains 3 inches, while the neck depth for the back is going to be 1.5 inches. After doing that, I'll connect the dots. Okay, so the next thing I'll do now is to slant from the 1 inch shoulder slope into the neckline area like this. So I've already marked out the armhole depth, which is my chest line. I didn't place my bust line for the back because it's not important. So the same measurement I have on the shoulder line, which is 8 inches, I placed it on the chest line. I'll connect the 2 dots now into a straight line. On the chest line, I'll place my bust circumference divided by 4. I will indicate that with a dot. From the center back, I'll go in by 4 inches, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement. And then I'll connect into a straight line like this. on the waistline, I'll take half an inch on both sides of the straight line. So instead of just connecting the dart from the base all the way upward, on the chest line I decided to take 0.25 inches on both sides of the straight line. 0.25 inches is half an inch, so I'll take 0.25 to the left and 0.25 to the right, okay? And then I'm going to connect all the way down, okay? So after taking the dart, I already have my bust circumference divided by 4 on the chest line. What I'll do is to add 1 inch for my stitching allowance. I'm not going to replace the dart for the chest line, okay? So on that 1 inch for stitching allowance, I'm going to go down by half an inch, just like we did for the front. I'll mark the center of the armhole area, and on that center I'll come in by half an inch. After doing that, I'll connect from the shoulder slope to the half an inch, and from that point to the half an inch that I came down with. So I'm not connecting directly to the chest line, I'm connecting half an inch below the chest line, okay? So after doing that, this is what I have. So the next thing I'll do is to place my waist circumference divided by 4. I'll replace the dart of 1 inch, and then I'll add 1 inch for my stitching allowance. So after doing that, I'll connect from the chest line all the way to the waistline. So the same measurement I have on the waistline is the same measurement I have on the blouse length. So I'll go ahead and cut. After cutting, this is what I have. So I'm going to bring in my front pattern, and I'm going to align the front and the back pattern together. So I'll place the neck width together like this, making sure they are sitting together. So make sure the front neckline and the back neckline is facing the same place, and then you are going to make sure the neck width is touching each other. Then you use your pin or your masking tape to hold it down, okay? After doing that, now I'm going to mark the same 1.5 inches that I have on the front shoulder. I'll mark it on the back shoulder, okay? After doing that, I'll also mark it on the neck depth, okay? So I'll go down by 1.5 inches on the neck depth. I'll indicate the 1.5 inches with a dot. After doing that, I'll use my ruler to connect it upward like this. So after connecting, this is what I have for the Halter neckline. So I'm going to be cutting it out. So after cutting the Halter neckline, I'll go ahead and cut the main body. So pay close attention so you know where to cut. So guys, after cutting, I'll close up the dart. So I'll open it up on the upper part like this, but I'm not going to cut it out completely. I'll just cut it close to the end like this, and then I'm going to cover it up like this, okay? So don't cut out the side of your fabric before closing your dart, okay? So after covering it up, I'm going to use my pin to hold it down. So after covering it up, you can see the space that I have here is no longer the same. So what I'll do is to adjust it, okay, into the side like this, and then I'll go ahead and cut. After cutting, guys, this is what I have for the front. So we're going to finish up the back. So for the back is open, so what I'll do is to go down by half an inch from the chest line. I'll indicate the half an inch with a dot. On that dot, I'm going to connect towards the armhole. So you can just connect it straight instead of connecting it the way I just did. The other part of the armhole that is there is not supposed to be there, which I'll be trimming out soon. Okay, so I'll place this on my fabric and I'll go ahead and cut. So after cutting, this is what I have. What I did was to add half an inch all the way around. Okay, so for the front I have 4 pieces, 2 main piece and 2 lining piece, and for the side I also have 2 main piece and 2 lining piece. So my fabric was not enough to cut out lining, so I'm using a black lining. Okay, so I'm going to arrange them in place. We'll start with the front. Okay, so I'll place the center front and the side front side by side, as you can see, and then I'll start pinning the side front on the center front. So you pin, you head over to your sewing machine to sew with the shape that you already have on the fabric. After pinning the main fabric in place, I'll head over to my sewing machine to use half an inch, the half an inch we added earlier, to sew. I'll also pin my lining piece in place and I'll sew using the half an inch allowance. So this is the back piece. For the back piece, the center back is on fold and I have 2 pieces here. I added half an inch on the upper part and on the lower part. So what I'll do now is to retake my dart. Okay, so I'm placing half of my nipple to nipple measurement on the waistline. I marked half an inch on both sides, while on the upper part I marked 0.25 inches, just like I did on the pattern paper. I'm just remarking the dart so it's easy for me to sew. I've sewn the front piece in place and this is what I have. So after sewing with the half an inch, I went ahead to open up the seam and I ironed it flat. So this is what it looks like at the back. So you can see the excess fabric that I have on the armhole area. So what I'll do now is to trim it off. Okay, remember we extended it by 1 inch, so that's because I did not want to have any shortage of fabric. Now that I'm sure that I don't have any shortage of fabric, I'll go ahead and just trim what is left there on the lining piece and the main fabric. So now I'm going to place the lining piece and the main fabric right sides facing right side, and I'll pin all the way around. Okay, pin all the way around. I'll head over to my sewing machine to sew on all sides. I'm only going to leave the side open, and that is where I'm going to be using to turn everything inside out. Okay, so I'll pin this part, I'll pin the other part, I'll also pin the back in place. I'll sew, I'll turn to the right side and I'll give it a good press. I've taken in the darts for the back. This is what they look like. So I'm going to place them right sides facing right side, and I'll head over to my sewing machine to sew, and then I'll leave one side open, which I'll be using to turn everything inside out. So I've turned the front piece with my lining and this is what I have. So the next thing I'll do now is to join the the neckline area. Okay, we join the neckline area together. So you can just place them right sides facing right side and you use half an inch to sew, or you can open one part. Okay, and you're going to place them together the way we normally join our shoulders together to give it a neat finishing. So you open one part up, as you can see me doing, and then you're going to place the other part inside, lining to lining, fabric to fabric. Okay, and then you are going to sew using the 1/2 inch. After sewing, you close up the part that is open. So after sewing the neckline together, this is what I have. I've also gone ahead to sew the back. So I don't want the back to gape. So what I want to do is to reduce the neckline of the back. So fold it into two. I'll place my tape like this, and I'm going to mark 8 inches. So I'll cut this part out. That is the part that have the curve on the armhole area. I'll just cut it out, okay? So what I'll do now is to place this to the back, and I'll pin the front, sorry, and I'll pin. After pinning, I'll go ahead and sew using my 1 inch allowance. So after sewing, this is what I have. This is what it looks like on the inside. So the last thing you do is to open your buttonhole, and then you fix your button in place. So that is all for this tutorial. I hope it was helpful. Don't forget to like this video, leave your questions in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.